it's out pretty much. Uh, we just have to fully release it and get it out to the world. So it'll be fun to watch that come out.
It's awesome. Yeah, I was taking a look at it, and I mean, I need help with sales myself, and so I think it's going to be
Well,
awesome.
yeah, man. So, well, let's start with this. I know you got a few things going. I know that we connected on Connect Utah about like helping youth tackle entrepreneurship and give them opportunities that they wouldn't find in like a traditional classroom setting. How did you start that, and where did that come from?
Yeah, so for me, this journey started like 7 years ago. I was in my last year of college, and one of my best
Yeah.
buddies as a kid, when I was 24, he was also 24, but he had gotten involved with a different group of kids. And so, like, I had been like living, honestly, this life that I was like so happy about, chasing dreams. And he had been in and out of corrections facilities for a decade. And that just like drove me crazy that choices as a kid could like curb his whole life. And
Yeah.
and so I was sitting there in college, and I'm like, how do we figure out how to like give kids more passion, more purpose, more meaning in their lives? And so I started searching and searching and searching for something that could be helpful to them, and
Yeah.
dabbled a little bit in the nonprofit space, dabbled a little bit with entrepreneurship, a little bit in charter schools, public schools. And
Yeah.
the thing that I arrived at was that the meaning that comes through creation is almost second to none. It's pretty awesome. And so
Yeah.
I started helping kids with their creativity, as well as starting up businesses about 5 years ago.
Oh,
And
wow.
it's been a ride, man. And so we take them down different challenges and different paths that help them fall in love with creation, take ideas, and turn them into
Yeah.
reality. And then we culminate with a Shark Tank competition.
Oh, really? Oh, so
Yeah,
you kind of do your own like mini little Shark Tank. So is that what I'm understanding, or is it like the actual
yeah,
Shark Tank?
yeah. So we host them and we put them on, and so our next one is actually on December 11th in Provo,
Oh,
Utah.
nice.
So yeah, they're so awesome, and we have kids who are like they do anything and everything. So some people are setting out to invent new products, others are doing meal prep for people, and others are a little bit more elementary, but it's awesome
Yeah.
stuff.
Oh, wow, dude. Holy cow. That's insane. Um, so you have kids going all over the place. I kind of want to go back just a little bit. You were studying in college. I mean, you talked about your friend doing these things, and you kind of, getting this realization that sometimes when you're a kid, these decisions can, turn for the worst. And you start this whole thing. But in college, what were you studying in college, and like, how did you finally find your way into like mentoring kids? Because that would be, I mean, it's a very no like it's amazing thing to do, but it feels like there's so many things you could do in college that so many people do. You know what I mean? And
Yeah,
that one is pretty unique.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. So I was studying psychology because, to
Oh,
be
okay.
honest with you, in my head I was like, I know I want to help people, and the only way or the best way that I thought I knew how was to do, like the therapy route.
Oh, yeah.
And and it actually, so it turned out that after a couple of years where I had this realization with like, okay, we got to help kids create stuff. And a lot of people, uh, Dalton, a lot of people will say like, okay, I'm going to go and make my money, and then I'll dedicate my life to like philanthropy.
Yeah.
And and there I was at 24 being like that. I can't wait 20 or 30 years, man. Like
Yeah.
I've just got to I've got to figure out how to make money doing the thing that I care about and the thing that I love. And
Yeah.
so I actually immediately applied to grad school. And so I went and got
Oh,
a
wow.
degree in public administration,
Oh,
which sort of
nice.
set me up on the nonprofit route. And so um, while I was in my MPA degree, an individual offered me like a pretty decent lump sum of cash. And he
Yeah.
basically just said like, hey, I've got like this chunk of cash. Our visions align. Like I'll give the money, you give your time, and let's make something happen. And so
Oh, cool.
that's how it all started for me to jump in this aspect of mentoring teens and working with them pretty closely.
That's pretty sweet, man. So do you work with teens all over, or is it specifically in, like, what would that be, like southern, central Utah, like Provo area, or do you work everywhere, or what is that?
Yeah, so we started off only here in Utah County. Yes, central
Okay.
northern Utah. But
Okay.
as of right now, and really starting in January, we're launching more of our online programs. So we're branching out. We're going
Yeah.
nationwide, and it's something that I'm absolutely thrilled about.
Yeah. That. So I think, and that's how we connected, right? You were looking for people to help on the online perspective.
Absolutely, because
It should
what
be online.
Yeah, and what we've built out so far is this program where like we'll help kids take ideas and then start businesses with them. And for the last
Hmm.
few years, that's where we've been stationed ourselves. And so
Yeah.
what I'm building out now is okay. Well, how do we get other kids interested in entrepreneurship? So we're launching a program for kids, specifically helping them just explode in their creativity,
Oh,
and then
nice.
also creating the program. This is where I reached out to people like you for those who have just launched a business. Now, how do we help coach them through going from awesome, you've
Yeah.
launched it and maybe you've got some investment, but now let's build this thing.
Yeah, build it and scale it and get it like off the ground. Yeah, man, because that's a really great thing, when we've kind of switched in the world of business where like entrepreneurship is a buzz and now ideas really aren't worth a whole lot.
Right.
You know what I'm
Right.
saying?
I totally know what you're saying. I think the interesting thing and the thing that we focus on a lot, because I totally agree with you, where like
Yeah.
ideas are a dime a dozen. And
Yeah, I
like
mean, I've got like, I got a notebook full of ideas.
yeah.
They
And
just
most
sit
people who
there.
are entrepreneurially minded, they have one of those,
You just write
laying
them down.
around.
Yeah, I got a bullet journal, dude.
And it's crazy because I play a
Yeah.
little bit in the physical product space, and so I don't know if you've ever like looked at the U.S. Patent Office and browsed through the patents. I mean, there
Yeah.
seriously are like millions of patents that like
Wow.
no one's ever brought to market. And so
Yeah.
it's fascinating because, like you said, ideas are a dime a dozen, but actually executing them and providing real value for people, it
Mhm.
requires real, not only know-how, but a ton of grit.
Well, you know what's funny about that? Like, I help people with their sales teams, and like I help them, like, and I specifically like if somebody comes up and they're like, I want you to train my sales team, like I do that. But I like the small business owners who who just need help like negotiating with everyday clients, or maybe they need help negotiating with like an investor or selling their product or something like that. But what's funny is like every time I end up helping somebody, not every time, but sometimes I'll be asked to sign like an NDA, and I'm like, okay, and I never say no, because like I don't, I mean, like, but I'm always curious. I'm like, oh, that's fine, like, but what is it for? And they're like, well, I don't want anybody to take my idea. And I'm like, well, all right. I mean, like, I'll sign it. Like, I'll be like, okay, I'll sign whatever you want me to sign. But you got to know that, like, if you're scared that somebody's taking your idea, in my opinion, that means you're not taking enough action to get it out there to enough people. That's you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because as a sales guy, like, I teach confidence. Like, you could put me right now on a sales floor where with 100 other people, and I would find a way to come out on top, because it's not about competition.
Mm.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I just,
Yeah.
yeah, it's just funny. I get these NDAs and I'm like, "Oh, all right," but like,
Yeah.
it doesn't
I
mean,
see that all the time where
yeah,
like that
dude.
is the biggest hesitation where people are like, well, I like them. I don't want to get started or I don't want to talk to people about my idea because then they might steal it. And I'm like, listen, if you don't talk about your idea, like, A, you're never going to do it either. So like,
Yeah.
what's the point of having it if you never talk about it? And B, people are just so busy. And so like,
Yeah.
I don't know. People are a lot less interested in
Yeah.
stealing ideas, I think, than we like to
Yeah,
think.
I do tell people that. I'm like, "You're talking to the wrong guy if you think I'm gonna steal your idea. I got way too many. My wife will kill me if I start another business." You know
Yeah.
what I'm saying?
Yeah,
She'll kill me. I'm just
absolutely.
kidding.
Yeah, I
But,
feel that.
yeah, but that it's really cool, because then you get to like, but it's also cool, like in your position, to see a lot of kids come up with their own ideas. What do you get the most of, like, dealing in this space? You said for 5 years.
Mhm.
Okay, what do you get the most of? What ideas do you come up frequently?
Yeah, can I tell you some of my favorite ideas? So
Yeah. Go ahead.
some of the coolest stuff. Funny enough, like there's a whole spectrum, right? And so some people will come and they'll do greeting cards, or they'll want to do
Oh, cool.
calligraphy, and all that stuff is awesome. Other people will do landscaping. I once had
Oh.
a 13-year-old who we were talking about business ideas, and he's 13 and he looks at me and he's like, well, I don't want to do a landscaping business because that's a kid's business. And I was like, well, first of all, like you
Nope.
are 13, but second of all, like people make huge amount of money doing
Yeah.
landscaping. It's about doing it right. Like if you want to run an adult
Yeah.
business, run it like an adult. Um, and so across the board that way.
That's
And then a
funny.
few of our teens end up wanting to create products, which is so awesome. So a few years
Yeah.
back, one of our participants, his name was Michael. Michael's actually going to be one of the judges in our Shark Tank this year, and I'm so stoked about it. He's 20
Oh,
now.
wow. So you get
Uh,
to have people come back and kind of go full
yeah,
circle.
totally.
That's
This is actually
dope.
the first time we've done that, and I'm really stoked on it. But
Yeah, that's
Michael,
dope.
he created so they're wooden bow ties, and they
Oh.
connect via magnet, so you can exchange the design you want.
Ah,
Uh,
hey,
Pretty awesome, right? And
that's
so
cool.
if you go to any of the local farmers markets, he's just like there's always a crowd around his booth and he's crushing it. He's doing awesome.
Yeah.
This year he's projected to bring in 65K on wooden bow ties.
Wow.
It's
Wooden
awesome.
bow ties, dude. That's
I know.
insanity.
It is so awesome. And so
Wow, good for
I
him.
love people who are fiddling around in that space of product design. Those are always my favorites. Although I mean, kids who are doing landscaping or putting up Christmas lights or cleaning garbage
Yeah.
cans, all that stuff is just inspiring to see when kids are doing stuff
Yeah.
that adults don't want to do, you know?
Oh, yeah, that's great. I posted on Twitter. I'm like, I'm very active on Twitter, and part of like what I help teach people, I have like a virtual assistant thing. I help people start their own VA business. But I posted that. I was like, if you want to make an extra $1,500 a month, go find 10 business owners and offer to do everything that they don't want to do.
Yeah.
And it's cool, you know what I mean? And you'll make all the money that you need to make. And what's cool about that is, yes, these kids can go and do things that, yeah, like grown-ups don't want to do. That's a great idea, man. And it teaches like work ethic and stuff, and that's
Totally.
fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the things we talk about all the time is like, I think kids do it, adults do it, we all do it, where we sort of we tell this story in our mind where it's like, well, if it's not the next Facebook, then what's the point?
Oh,
Or if it's not
yeah.
the next Airbnb, then I'm wasting my time. And
Yeah.
I personally believe you have to start a
Mhm.
$100 business before you learn the skills to start the bigger thing, you know?
Yeah.
Like you
Have
gotta
you
you
Yeah.
go sorry,
Have
go
you
ahead.
been listening to my podcast? Because
Oh,
this is no, I'm serious. Like I have two main like overarching principles of the reason why I started this podcast. The first one was like if people approach business and they're like, if I'm not the next Jeff Bezos or the next Warren Buffett, like I'm out, right? And I'm
right.
like, yeah, but you have. So what's funny, you were mentioning about landscaping. So I briefly met Rudy Larson, who's the CEO and founder of Lawn Butler here in Utah.
Okay.
You
Yeah.
familiar with Lawn Butler? Yeah, he's got
I'm
a
actually
and
not, but
he's oh, okay. So I mean, it might be further. Like I live in North Salt Lake, so it might be further up here, but there's tons of them in Salt. I mean, it's a huge
okay.
business that he started when he was 16
No
and just
kidding.
kept going. Yeah, and dude, I mean, he's got
That's so
trucks,
awesome.
he's got people. Um, so it's like, but then you got guys like, so I met Rudy Larson. I interviewed Chemo Mack, who's the owner of Mobetta's on here. Um,
Okay, nice.
and it's
Yeah.
like, yeah, you don't want to start your business because you're not going to be the next Jeff Bezos, but Chemo Mack is right next door, and that guy's a multimillionaire, and he'll sit down and eat lunch with you if you ask
Yeah.
him to. He would find the
Yeah.
time, you know. And then the second one is, that, the one then the second thing is getting people just to start, because I had a conversation with a guy who where we talked just about this, that people are like, I'm not going to start a business until I have $1 million idea. And my argument is what you say. You wouldn't even recognize $1 million idea because you've never started your $100 idea. You wouldn't even know if it's a million. You know what I'm saying?
Right, and you
I
wouldn't
want to
know
start
how
it.
to
Yeah.
build it.
Yeah, you wouldn't know how to build it, but it's like, I'm waiting for the $1,000,000 idea. Have you started $100 idea? Well, no. Okay, well, I mean, I don't know what
Yeah.
to tell you. You're never gonna find $1,000,000 idea.
Yeah, absolutely, and I
It's
totally
crazy,
agree. I
bro.
couldn't agree more. And I mean, like, I fall into
Yeah,
that sometimes too, right? Where you're like, "Well, it's like, is
sure.
it really worth my time?" And
Yeah.
one of my favorite things is, I mean, we're all familiar with Swig and Sodalicious, especially here in Utah, you know?
Oh, yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, man.
Kevin Arneg, he used to come and speak with our kids, and, uh, his story is so awesome because he still describes Sodalicious as a glorified lemonade stand. It's like
Yeah.
the most simple business in the book that we all ran when we were 4 years old. For Kevin Arneg, that was $1,000,000 business. You know what I mean? Like, it's
Yeah.
just like who can apply the $100 business at a higher level, and you can do
Yeah.
just about anything.
Yeah. And it just shows you, like, it's not so much about the idea as it is just about how you can execute it, how you can get it out there to people. And I really believe, like, when you talk about things like Sodalicious and Swig and Fizz and all these places, like, there's a million drink shops, but every one of them can be successful if you just, like, do it and be you and put you into the process. You know what I'm saying?
Right? This is where your cells come into play, right?
Oh, yeah. Well, and not only that, but, like, one of the things that you wanted to talk about, which I definitely wanna get to, is, like, the creativity that comes into the
Mhm.
business. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I grew up in the Midwest, right? That's why I'm wearing Iowa.
Yeah.
Um, I grew up in the Midwest, and, like, we didn't have drink shops, but we had Sonic. So when I came and Sonic's like the OG soda,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
Isn't
It's
it
like
dubbed
happy
America's
hours,
ultimate
like,
drink stop or something?
yeah, 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 yeah. I mean, well, that was our. So when I came here, they were like, "Oh, we can go to Fizz," and I was like, "We'll just go to, like, are you mean Sonic? Like, what do they do?" And they would explain to me. I'm like, "Oh, just like Sonic," but there's no Sonics out here. But yeah, it's about, like, the creativity that you put into it, and people buy you. Like, yeah, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I believe in that. And I would like, I mean, if the horse is dead, man, I'll beat the dead horse like over and over again because I truly think so. Something that happens in our school system, whether you're like talking traditional school or what have you, but
Hmm.
primarily the public school system, is that it was literally designed to cough out factory workers, right? To be assembly
Hmm.
workers, and so
Yeah.
it turns or it attempts to turn kids into cookie cutters. And
Right.
so, like, as all of us grow up, we have this thing where the creativity has been shoved out of us and the
Hmm.
curiosity gets extinguished in us. And so
Yeah.
one thing that we try to do big time is helping kids
Yeah.
not only maintain their creativity but explode it. And so we'll gamify the whole process. And one thing that we do, so we give them an activity and a challenge where, for example, it's like, okay, you have 120 dominoes here. How tall can you build that tower? You're on a time crunch versus kids around the country. Ready, set, go. They're
Yeah.
experimenting styles. They're experimenting, different strategies to build that tower. And at face value, it feels like that's not really connected to entrepreneurship. Uh,
Yeah.
but but what we're getting down to is this idea that creativity, what it's all about, is finding value and finding the ability to create value for other people when
Hmm.
originally there wasn't anything there. So whether that's just a pile of dominoes that you're turning into a tower, when you start growing up, right, that turns into lemons and water that you sell for lemonade. Uh, how do we create an insane amount of value for other people, so much so they start giving us their money for it?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And how do you teach them how to find what's valuable to other people? Because I think values is we've hit it on the head, right? But my thing with when people say value is it's so, like, arbitrary. And my favorite thing is, like, value. And I even say this, like, in my book that's coming out, but, like, value is like beauty, right? It's in the eye of the beholder. So
Yeah,
so how do you, yeah, you know what I mean? So how do you teach them to find out what's valuable to maybe
yeah.
their power base or whatever?
Absolutely. And so this is something where we teased it, we mentioned it a little bit before of being willing to talk about it, being
Oh,
willing to
yeah.
get your idea out there. So what we'll do is we'll do some ideation activities and we'll get the the ideas flowing. But then we just send the kids out to literally just talk to people and to try and sell people on their idea before they even have a product, right? And
Yeah.
so we step into this space that's really vulnerable, and for kids and adults alike, it's kind of terrifying, right? You're wearing your
Yeah.
emotions on your sleeve, and it's something that you're interested in. And so
Yeah.
we send them out to sell stuff they haven't created yet. And then we pay close attention to how people are responding, right? If people are pulling out their wallets, we might have an
Yeah.
idea. And if people are giving us excuses, then we maybe need to keep looking.
Right. Yeah, yeah. But that's a great one, that's a great way. I mean, that's sales is like this. You have an automatic feedback. You get automatic
Hmm.
feedback. It's like because I mean, at the end of the day, we can like study pricing and we can study marketing, but if somebody's not going to cut a check,
Right.
like it's not worth anything, right? So my favorite quote, and I learned this in my first sales job. I sold cars, and it was the best thing I've ever done in my life.
Mm.
But we talked they so you know how there's book values in cars. So people go like if you want to know the value of your car, you'll go to like Kelly Blue Book or Edmunds
Yeah.
or something like that, right?
Uh-huh.
And I got this from a grumpy old used car manager, but it was like full of so much wisdom. But he said the only book value that matters in this world is a checkbook.
Mm.
You know what I'm saying? And
Yeah.
he would say that to customers and it kind of piss them off. But I was like, but you know what? At the end of the day, in business, like we can get market caps, we can get valuations, but the only book that matters is a checkbook, like what
Yeah.
somebody's willing to pay for and how much they're willing to pay for it. So
Yeah.
that's pretty cool that
And
you make them go out there and like put their feet on the fire and go
and
sell it,
so
man.
cool. And to be honest with you, like that's a mistake that I've made, and I think a lot of us make as we're in the startup process, is that we like we'll spend dozens of hours like making a Facebook page and like
Yeah,
getting a
right.
website going, and like we'll do all of these things like feel like we're making progress, but we have no
Mhm.
idea if anybody even wants the thing we're going to sell to them. And so like
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like a lot of time we spin our wheels before we really before we get to the important issue is anybody pulling out their checkbooks for this?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, because I think what's worse than I mean, I think what's really cool about what you're doing, sending these kids out and making them sell it. First of all, they get like invaluable experience because that's real life.
Yeah.
Like these guys who tell these sales gurus, like air quotes, that tell you like cold calling is dead. They're lying to you. Like
Mm,
you have to market yourself. You have to go knock on a door. And I mean, maybe not cold calling, right? Maybe not picking up the phone and calling somebody you've never met. But like I
right.
would also consider cold calling like, hey, Travis, I wanna pitch you an idea. You have 5 minutes? Like that would
Yeah.
be to me, yeah, you don't know what I'm doing, you don't know what I'm
Right.
offering, but that's great
Totally.
experience, man.
Yeah, it's awesome
Man, that's cool.
experience, and
How do
you
they
can
how do
see
they react to that when you tell them like, all right, you got to go sell this?
I mean, they're terrified, man. It's so scary. But
Yeah.
one thing we do before that, so one step we do is we do a few activities that help them get experience starting to see what's valuable and what has value. So one of the first activities we do is we send them out and they just play bigger or better. And so I
Oh, okay,
literally give
cool.
them, yeah, you know the game.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
okay.
I give them just a rock, and and their task is to go out and get stuff that's bigger or better or more valuable. And so we've
Wow.
had kids, man, I'm serious. We've had kids do incredible stuff where a few trades in, we have had a kid come back with an iPhone. This was back when an iPhone 9 was the newest one. He came back with an
Yeah.
iPhone 6, and we were
Oh,
like, what?
wow.
It was so awesome.
Yeah.
So he sold it for $600. It was insane. We've had a
Wow.
girl, the all-time winner of our Bigger or Better challenge. She traded and traded, and then she ended up with a motorcycle trailer.
Oh,
And
wow, a tray. Oh my gosh.
right, and she hops on KSL, and she offers, instead of for sale, she offers it for trade. And she got in contact with a cement layer, and her parents had wanted a cement pad in their backyard, and so she traded the trailer for the cement supplier for a cement pad in her parents' backyard for $10,000.
Yeah,
That's
I
what the
can
cement pad
so
was
like a
valued.
fully enclosed motorcycle trailer.
Yeah, Yeah.
Oh
And
my
so
gosh, dude.
I mean, that was just like so awesome, right?
Wow.
But the interesting thing is sometimes as we're doing these sorts of activities, right? Like sometimes kids will come back. I also had a kid come back with like a potbelly stove, and he
Oh,
told me, he's
nice.
like, online it tells me that this thing is worth $1,200, and I was like, awesome.
Wow.
Then go list it and sell it, and he couldn't
Yeah.
sell the thing. And so like we do a lot of activities like this where they
Yeah. All
start
right.
to get a feel for like, okay, this I got a Sony sound bar and people would buy that. I got whatever else, a potbelly stove, and people didn't want it, right? And they start to
Yeah.
figure out what's valuable. How do you list stuff so that people find it valuable? And
Yeah. Or like where you list it, right? Because like a
right,
potbelly stove might not sell on KSL, but that might sell on Facebook or Craigslist. That's one in the Midwest,
totally,
right? But
totally,
it's
and
just that's cool, man. That's cool.
yeah,
So yeah,
it's
so you get that's really
yeah,
cool.
we just throw them out to the wolves, man. And
Good.
so what happens is once kids have a few positive experiences, and even if their positive experience is like a kid came back once with a pair of Kyrie Irving shoes, like the
Oh yeah.
basketball
Okay.
shoes,
Cool.
and he was like, you know what? I actually don't want to sell these. Like, I just want to keep them. And it was all right, cool. You just spent
Yeah.
30
Whatever.
minutes and you got yourself a pair of new shoes that are pretty dope, you know?
Yeah.
And so before they even come up with an idea that's their own, they start to build in confidence of what they can achieve and the fact that they can make money doing some pretty random stuff.
Yeah, and that's the cool part. Like, that's the cool thing. I follow this person on Twitter who's like, she talks about cash flowing businesses that aren't glamorous, like
Mm,
vending machine, like these places you'd
yeah,
never think would make money, like vending machines or
yeah.
parking lots or something like that. It's like, yeah, you can really make money. Or like, dude, wooden bow ties. Who would have ever thought? You know what I
Most
mean?
people
But
think that.
yeah, no, I mean, you would have never thought about it, but you have a cool idea. You get a spunky little kid who's on fire, and
Uh-huh.
who could sell, you know what I mean? Who could sell ice to an Eskimo, and you just, you
Yeah.
know what I mean? And you just let him go, and then
Yeah.
he makes 65K in a year, and
It,
he needs a CPA.
he does. And it is so cool. It's something really it's something that I talk to parents about all the time too. Is getting started in business when you're a teenager is so beneficial because let's be honest, like if you or I, Dalton, if we went and knocked on a door, we were like selling Hershey's chocolates, people would
Yeah,
look at us kind of weird.
yeah.
Flash back the clock, if we were 16 doing that same thing, every
Oh,
one of those
everybody
people would
would buy it.
give us money for a Hershey's bar. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, it is a great time to kind of like learn the ropes, and it's a great time to like learn and also have people be easy on you, because yes,
Yeah.
like if somebody, like every time, well, because I'm a sales guy, and the number one rule I tell people is don't skip the lemonade stand. Like if you're in sales and you're serious about selling, don't skip the lemonade stand, because that will come
Mm.
back to, if you can't pay $5 for crappy lemonade,
Uh-huh.
nobody will come and buy it. I mean, I'm not saying all of it's crappy, but you know what I mean? Like that's the
Yeah, I see
rule.
what
If you want to be
yeah.
successful in sales, a little kid comes and knocks on your door and selling those little chocolate bars for $2. I don't care if you can buy 18 of them for $2. You hand the kid $2 and you eat your chocolate and you go home.
Yeah.
You
Yeah, and
just
I
do
love
it.
it. I absolutely love it. I literally will, like, flip U-turns on the street when I see kids selling lemonade.
Yeah.
I'll flip around. I'll, like, dig in the seat cushions. Where are the quarters, you know? I'm figuring out how to give those
Yes.
kids some money.
Because and you know what? Sometimes I'm like, hey, I can't afford, like sometimes they're selling it and I don't have any cash on me. Rookie mistake. But sometimes I'm like, hey, I can't afford it. So like just take this money and just keep it, right? Like
Yeah,
you got to do something. I don't know. Because it's just like that's my rule. That's my rule. Like if you join a sales team that I'm on, or if you are in one of my trainings, that's the number one rule.
that is
Don't skip
awesome.
the lemonade stand.
I
Ever.
love that. I love that 'cause I think it does a lot for both parties,
It
and
does. It does.
specifically for the kids' perspective, just the confidence boost, man. That like I
You can
just
sell
saw a
something.
stranger who pulled over in their car and they gave me money. you know, like that's
Yeah.
crazy. And so
Yeah.
once,
It's a
once we
beautiful
help
thing.
kids get in that mentality, then they start getting a little more courageous and like, oh, well, maybe I can
That's
provide
cool.
more value than a lemonade cup.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
And
it's
then you
probably
kind of
crappy
just go
lemonade.
from there, and you let them knock doors, and people aren't mean to them, but some people, they might be mean, but they might be a little cold. And that's what you kind of want to get. You know what I mean? And you
Yeah.
just open them up and start
Yeah.
giving
And
them ideas. And
that's the beauty
mhm.
of having a group too, where we'll come back after a week and we'll all just laugh together about the old grandpa who was mean to him on the doorstep, you know?
Yeah.
And
Because
so
those
and
guys, yeah.
yeah, and so instead of it being
They are.
traumatizing, it's like who has the craziest story from this week, you know?
Oh,
And we'll
yeah.
all just
Good
laugh
call.
and it ends up being
Yeah.
a good time.
Yeah, and yeah, and what I teach salespeople, it's just so funny because I just feel like business is so much sales, and if a grandpa won't buy a lemonade, if that grumpy old man won't buy a lemonade, he's not gonna, he gives everybody a hard time.
Yeah.
And I know that, right? So like that's what's also cool is like, you see somebody being mean and you're just like, maybe they had a bad day or maybe they just do that to everybody. Like I'm not
Right.
special, right? He didn't go out of
Right.
his way to be a douche to me. He's probably a douche to everybody. So
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
good. Move
almost a
on.
guarantee.
Yeah.
Hey, have you heard of the game? It's actually a TED Talk. A guy gave a TED Talk a few years back called Rejection Proof. You heard of that one?
Oh, I don't think so. No, but enlighten me, please. I love TED
Okay,
Talks.
it's pretty awesome.
Rejection
I
proof.
started
Okay.
doing it with the kids as soon as I saw this TED Talk because what he did is he set out and for I don't remember if it was a month or a full year, but he decided that his goal was to get rejected as many times as he could. So he
Oh,
just
cool.
he would just walk into a McDonald's and ask for a cheeseburger, or he would like walk up to a stranger and ask her to marry him, like stuff that he knew or he anticipated that he would get rejected on,
Yeah.
because he wanted to get insanely comfortable with the idea of getting rejected.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
And so we'll do this with the kids, and it's awesome because they'll come back a week later and they're like, I got rejected 42 times this week, and it's like, nice job, Johnny, so awesome. And then the
That's
crazy
great.
thing, the crazy part too is then they'll come back and they'll also say, like somebody just gave me a $20 bill. I just asked them
Oh,
for one and
cool.
they gave it to me. Or I just like I pulled up to the car wash place and they just gave me a free car wash because I asked them. And so
Yeah.
not only do they experience this idea that like, oh, getting rejected isn't the end of the world, but they also experience this idea that people actually want to say yes to you.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's what is so cool about that is I've never heard of that game, but it's a perfect game because I think there's two, right? It's important to learn how to get rejected so that you can prepare for it. Like
Hmm.
somebody tells you no, like you didn't die, you didn't get sick. You know what I mean? They didn't yell
Yeah.
at you most likely. They just said no.
Right.
They might have told some bad stories behind your back, but it's okay. So like it's fine, right? It's not the end of the world.
Right.
And then but the second thing is like what you just said. Like just ask them and then shut up. Can I
Yeah.
have 20 bucks? The worst they're going to say is no. Yeah, worst they're going to say is no. But what
Right.
if they say yes and hand you 20 bucks? That's great.
Yeah.
That's
It
so
is.
cool cuz that's the hardest thing for people to do in sales.
It's
I
just to
go,
ask.
just ask them. Just lay it down. What are they going to do? Tell you no? That's not a big
Yeah.
deal. We know what to do after they say no. So you might as well just get to it first. You
Yeah,
know?
my wife actually she works in digital marketing and she's exceptional. But one
Yeah.
of the things that one of the first questions she'll ask people if they come to her and ask her like, I'm just like not making any money. And the
Oh
first thing
yeah.
that she'll
Okay.
ask them is, are you asking people for their money? Uh, and if you're not pitching them, if you're not making a sell, like you'll never receive their
Yeah.
money, you know. And so
Yeah.
I just love that.
It is. That's wow. That's very great. It's like I'm
It's
not
like
making any
so
money. Well,
simple.
did you? Yeah. Did you ask him for it? Well,
Yeah.
I think so.
Like
Like,
maybe, I
yeah,
don't
because
know.
that's also frustrating for me. Is like, you know, is when somebody goes, "I'm not making any money," and I go, "Okay, well, let me see like what you're doing," and I go, "Dude, you didn't even ask them." And it doesn't
Yeah,
have to be fancy. Like I know some people, you might hear me selling, it might be a little fancy, but I was like, it doesn't even have to be fancy. Just go, hey, I have red fish for sale. They're $15. Do you want $15 worth of red fish?
Yeah. Yeah,
No.
because if you don't, they'll never say yes, you know?
Yeah, that's so cool. Dude, that's amazing what you're doing for those kids. I can only imagine what happens after that. Like in
Yeah,
business, maybe some of them don't go on to be entrepreneurs, but I would rather have that kid on my team in any
right.
scenario,
Totally. And and
confident.
so yeah, absolutely. And so zooming out a
Yeah.
little bit of like bigger picture, I think that the world, do you have kids, Dalton?
Yeah, I do. I have two.
Oh, awesome. How old are they?
They're 3 and 5.
Okay, perfect. Still applies.
Yeah.
I think that by the time that your kids, I don't have any kids yet, but by the time that
Yeah,
your
yeah.
kids and my kids grow up to be 18-year-olds, I think that they will have to justify their reasoning to go to college because the
Yeah.
world is opening up in a way where, like, if you're just the best at video editing, nobody cares if you have a degree. They just want to know if you know how to do it. And
Yeah,
if you're going to,
they'll be like, "Can I see your portfolio?"
right.
I'd be
And
like, "Oh, I
so
love that. Oh, you're hired. I don't care."
exactly. And so for me,
Yeah.
the vision for the future in 5 years, 10 years, 15 years is creating a culture where kids and families see education in a little bit different way,
I think
where the
so.
metric shifts, and the metric is how can we create really awesome stuff? And if that's creating awesome podcasts or video
Yeah.
editing or Facebook ads or whatever, like go and find the skill that you're gonna hone. If you're not going to start your own business, cool, but go be the best value add to a CEO
Yeah.
somewhere. And then, like, if you want to be a
Yeah.
doctor, cool, go to college. But I don't think college will be a given in 20 years.
Oh, no way. There's no way. In fact, what's funny about that is I used to have a certain investment vehicle that I was planning on, I put away for my kids. And then I was like, I woke up one day and I was like, dude, college, I went crazy. I was like, college isn't even going to be a thing when they're 20. I
Yeah.
don't know. Because I think like, in fact, you know what else? I bring up Twitter a lot, but I created, I'm about, I have a year left my MBA. I'm taking a program. But what was funny was like I heard somebody on Twitter go, if you follow the right people, you'll have an MBA. And so
Mm.
I made a Twitter MBA list with like all of
Oh,
these. So in MBA you got finance, you got accounting. So I went and found finance places. I found accounting ones, found marketing. It's just cool to like go through that and be like, oh yeah, that's great, dude. You can
yeah.
learn all of that. You're all. It's almost like you're your own credential. And so now
Yeah.
it's really about who you know and how you can get and connect, connect with people and things like that.
Yeah. 100% agreed. I have seen so many kids, and kids are just like adults, right? Like some are driven, some aren't, some are
Yeah,
totally
sure.
distracted, others aren't.
Yeah, right.
But I've seen incredible kids where in my head, I'm like, okay, at the age of 16, like this kid's already created a product. He's already figured out supply chain. He's already like presented products to
Yeah,
customers. Where in my head, by the time that kid is 18 years old, he'll have been managing a supply chain, albeit a small supply chain, but he's managed a supply
sure.
chain for 4 years. And some
Yeah.
people go to college for 4 years to get a supply chain degree. And in my head, like, this kid's lived it, man. Like he's done it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And and I think that moving forward in the future, that type of model is quite realistic, actually. That a
Oh, I
huge
would believe.
number of kids at the
Yeah.
age of 14 can be outperforming. I mean, the world is just changing. And so, like, a
Yeah.
14-year-old can be just as equipped as you or I to run Facebook ads or to build
Yeah.
the next VR, whatever, like,
Yeah.
man, it
And
just
I
gotta
would, yeah. And I would almost be like, I would almost be like, if somebody were running Facebook ads and one was 14 and one was 25, I wouldn't even care because I've seen 25
yeah.
year olds run shitty ads.
Yeah.
I'm
All
like,
you
okay,
care
so
about. Yeah,
yeah, I
all
was
you
like,
care
okay.
about is, will you help my ROI?
Yeah,
And if
yeah,
the answer
exactly.
is yes, I
Yeah.
don't care if you're 7 or 70, you're my
Yeah, I
person,
mean, it doesn't really it doesn't matter to me. But it's you know what else is cool? So when you were talking about that, I think one of the times I laughed the hardest in my life was when somebody was taking, I was hiring salespeople. I was in a position where I was hiring salespeople. And somebody came up to me and they were like, I have a professional sales degree. I'm looking for a job. And I was
Mm.
like, this is going to be great. I'm like, no, and I meant that like sarcastically because I'm ready for this guy. You know, he was
Yeah.
like really confident. He came in and he was like, I got a degree. My GPA was this. And I was like, I looked at him and I was like, I like put down his resume and I was like, here, all right, here's the deal. And I do this interview thing when people get really cocky with me like that. It's not like Wolf of Wall Street because it's a lot different, but it's similar in the sense
Uh-huh.
that like I say, sell me the pen, right? And 99% of people fail, and including him. And
Oh
it's just so
no.
funny because you just like, yeah, you have a professional sales degree, but you've never asked somebody for $1
Right.
of real money. In 4 years, you got a degree and didn't sell one thing, legitimately sell
Yeah.
one thing.
It,
Like you're,
that kind of
like
like
you're
breaks my
crazy, dude.
brain. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like,
That's
you got a professional sales degree. I'm like, I sat in one of those classes. I'm like, I'm like, and listen, man, I sold cars. I'm right next to lawyers on like how much people hate you, right?
yeah.
It's like used car salesmen, lawyers, right? Like buy, the payday loans. Like we're right there with each other. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah,
And I
we
was like,
don't trust you.
yeah, and you shouldn't, by the way, like, which is fine. You know, that's on me. That's not on you. I gotta deal with that, and I do a good job with that. So my thing with him was like, bro, I sell cars, and I know that that wouldn't work to sell a car.
Right.
You're
Yeah.
crazy, man. You're crazy.
Yeah.
So it's
I
bananas.
love it. Yeah, I love it. And so I think what you're building, Dalton, is so similar actually to what I'm building out. And really the focus really is just how do we help people experience the world in such a way where they learn how to create value for other people. Like I
Yeah,
love your course that you just released on the virtual assistant, right? Like just go and create value for somebody, and it
right.
will increase your income. It'll help you build the life that you want to have. And so
Yeah.
I
Thank
love
you.
so much. Yeah, I love it, and I think genuinely that's the direction the world is going. Uh,
Yeah, yeah. I would venture to say that. Well, because and one of the reasons I created the VA course was because I found out that have you've heard the stories of like how did you get in this position, and like I've had people on here who've talked like this. They're like, hey, how did you get this, how did you get this position? And they're like, well, I found a guy I wanted to be like, and I was just like, hey, I'll be your assistant,
hmm,
right? Like I
yeah,
want to be in a commercial real estate. So I found this ultra successful commercial real estate guy, and I was like, hey, I want to do all the stuff that you don't want to do. And now this lady who started out as an assistant for commercial real estate is like her own commercial real estate mogul, because
hmm,
proximity is the proximity effect.
yeah,
You know, who
yeah,
wouldn't, if I got my assistant right here, of course I'm going to tell her stuff, him stuff, or her stuff, whatever, right? Of course you're going to get nuggets.
yeah.
So why wouldn't you do that? Why wouldn't you just be
Absolutely,
like,
absolutely.
I'll do whatever
And
you want, man? So it was
yeah,
cool. Yeah, it's very cool.
it's so cool, and I think the lesson there is invaluable. What the
Go ahead.
process that we take the kids through is uh, initially we call it the creator's path, where it's like, okay, if you're going to
Yeah, go
create
ahead. Yeah.
stuff that's valuable, we take you on a path. And the very first step of that path is we call it checking in. And so you have to understand, where do you want to be, who do you want to become, and what do you hope to create. And then the very next step is, what do you need to know that you don't know yet, and who do you need to meet that you haven't met yet to become that person. And so it's exactly that of,
Interesting.
like, if you want to create the next soda place, it's
Yeah.
like, who has created that, and go and learn from them. Go and
Yeah.
go and glean everything you can from them, and that'll help you take the next step to whether
Yeah.
you want to pivot and build it slightly different, or you want to mimic them. Right, either way, go and learn
Yeah.
from them.
And do you talk about like because one of the things that I see kind of in the business world, people like they ask themselves, are they going to do this forever? And I don't know if that's a really, fair question, because I've had like my first business did okay, but I quickly realized after 2 years, like, I don't want to do this anymore. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And so I kind of had like a little, like, this crisis that was like, oh shoot, I thought I was going to do this forever. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. And that, okay. So absolutely. We talk about that because I think that especially once kids start, I mean, I went through it my early 20s for sure, where it was like,
Yeah.
I'm supposed to know what I'm going to do for the next 60 years of my life. Like
Yeah. That's
that,
crazy.
that feels crazy. And I think it's totally just an archaic principle that
Yeah.
a lot more real now is what we talk about is what is the thing you feel called to create right now and go and do
Yeah.
it. And that might be different in 6 months, but at least, especially with kids, like at
Oh
least then they'll
yeah.
know now you hate that thing and now you know you hate it. So move on, like it doesn't
Yeah.
matter anymore.
Great.
Just like
Yeah.
keep
Don't
making
get,
stuff, you know?
yeah. Yeah. It's like a car,
Yeah.
you're not going to be married to this car for 60 years. Right.
Right. Right. Yeah. So I'm absolutely a believer in that. And that like
Cool.
it brings so much peace to my soul, knowing that.
Yeah, well, yeah, yeah. And you can just tell them like, "Hey, it's okay." Like the first business I had wasn't a success by any means, but it also wasn't a failure. And so for me, it was like, I had to just rewire my brain, take a few days, rewire my brain, and just be like, "Hey, look, I'm going to take everything I learned from this, realize that it wasn't a failure, but it's not going to keep going, and then
Right.
just like keep going. Just
Yeah.
you know, let it
Yeah.
go.
And
Deep breathe in, breathe out, move on."
yeah. And that scenario is actually better than most people fail on their first try. So
Yeah, yeah.
that's a win as far as I'm concerned.
Well, and that's what I'm saying. Like
Yeah.
we weren't like, we weren't printing cash, and we weren't burning it.
Right.
We were just like, so I started a little like tax firm,
Okay.
and cause I had this idea like, dude, we're going to get this, and we're going to go do bookkeeping we're going to go knock doors and do bookkeeping. That's exactly what we did.
Uh-huh.
Got a bunch of clients, did taxes. And then I was like, dude, I don't want to do taxes anymore. So I was just like, all right, I'm out.
Yeah.
But you know what? Like, but now I know taxes. Now people call me and they're like, hey, I need help, and I can help them. And then, it's really good to just like still cultivate those relationships that you gain even from everywhere, right? So just take it and keep going and build it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And
Cool.
interesting enough, so I have spent some time in the product, like the physical product, the e-com
Yeah.
space. And I learned pretty quickly that like I actually don't really want to manage or like I don't want to manage a team of people who are like shoving out e-com products. That doesn't actually
Uh-huh.
sound fun to me. And so that caused like I really loved the creating part of the product and then
Uh-huh.
didn't love so
Yeah.
much this idea of like managing a company. And so I had a
That's
hard
cool.
pivot, like a hard realization with myself, like,
Yeah.
okay, I probably just need to start selling my startups instead of trying to build them
Which
myself.
is great. Yeah, which is cool. Like I did it. So my second business was a product-based business. We sold
Okay.
CBD.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
That was a huge fail on every book that
Okay.
we
I did not see that
every
coming.
line of the yeah, every line of the balance sheet. Well, so we started it when right during the pandemic. So we started it like, dude, I remember, but I also remember getting this feeling. And this was the first time, this was the most interesting. I love this part of my life. It was the biggest, I lost so much money and so many things, but it was the coolest thing I've ever done because when we decided to start the CBD business, I had tunnel vision, man. I was like, I knew
Mm,
without a doubt in my heart, this is exactly what I needed to do. So
yeah.
it was so crazy. The pandemic hits literally the day Utah goes in lockdown. My supplier called me. He's like, look, you need to buy this right now. It's never going to be cheaper. If you want to start, you got to do it now. So I look over my wife. I'm driving. I'm like, hey, we got to buy this. So I cut a check for like about $8,000 worth of inventory
Awesome.
before we had a website, before we had ads, dude. So I buy this, right? And then
Committed.
I call my buddy. Yeah, I call my buddy and I'm like, hey, bro, we got to get this done. He's like, all right. I'm like, we got it. We got to go. And put our first Facebook ad up. Immediately gets pulled and our account gets shut down because you can't sell CBD on Facebook when we were
Oh,
doing this.
no.
I go, oh my gosh, are you kidding me? So then we go, okay, how are we going to do this? I create the podcast. So if you listen to some of the first episodes, the first sponsor was Happiest, and that was my company.
Okay.
So I'm like going to push this out with a podcast, right? We get influencers. That doesn't do very well, right? Yeah. Then a year and a half later, we were just like, I can't do this anymore. So we
Yeah.
just but it was cool, man. It was worth every penny
It's
that I
worth every
lost.
penny.
It was great.
Absolutely.
It was great.
Absolutely.
It still is tender subject with my wife, but you know what? It's fun. She's fine. We're still together. It's good.
Good.
That's
Good.
the other thing. Like your business fails, you're still married. You still got your kids. You still got your job.
Yeah. You're still
You'll be
rolling. Something that my wife and I talk about is, and this is like a fairly common idea, but the best stories are full of failure and they're full of hardship and they're full of challenges. And so we'll remind each other of that frequently, you know, when we're sort of like face planting in the ground. That like it would be a lame story without a few face plants, you know?
Yeah, for sure. What a great quote. It would be, yeah.
Yeah, right.
It would be lame without a few face plants. Yep, that's absolutely true, man. That's great. That's cool. Well, dude, I'm happy about this. I think there's a lot of people who are gonna get a lot out of this. So before we sign off, if somebody's listening to this and wants to get their kids involved or they want to get involved or whatever, how do they find you? Where do they go?
Okay, yeah, thank you. So on Facebook, on Instagram, we're on there as the Startup Academy, and then our website is startupacademyclubs.com, and so people can hop on there. They can see the different things we offer, and we'd love to help their kids create amazing stuff.
So let me ask you this: does it cost to get into the program, or how does somebody enroll?
Yeah, awesome question. And so for both the Creativity Club and the Startup Club, we run them. It's semester lengths at a time, and each of those sessions costs about $300 to hop into the program.
That's great! Holy crap!
It's honestly,
it's cool.
Awesome, and that's
a no-brainer.
Yeah, and they come with incredible supply packs. So we'll ship stuff to your house and get your kids all set up. You get the network of the online community. Honestly, it's incredible. And I'm not
that's great.
That, but
what a good Christmas present. You talking about kids in like their teenage years, right?
Yep.
First of all, I can't think of a Christmas present for a teenage kid that costs less than $300, and that might be whatever talking. But I mean, obviously, there's stuff that costs less than $300. But I'm just saying, if you're going to buy Christmas for a kid, that's probably around your budget, right? That's a great way to do it, man.
That's cool. Hey, thank you. Yeah, absolutely. And
that's cool.
Nowadays, where there's so much screen time happening, and that's a conversation for another day. But there's so much screen time happening for kids, and there's a pretty big debate on whether that's good for them or bad for them. And there's a lot of evidence that would suggest if we can pull them away from the screens a little bit, it's going to be for their good. And so what we would say is let's get them away from the screens a little bit, get them making stuff, and get their brain turning a little bit.
Get them creating, get them selling, get them
absolutely
marketing. Why not?
Absolutely.
Dude? Why not? Well, hey, thank you so much, Travis. I really appreciate your time, brother.
Oh, Dalton, it's been a pleasure, man. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, absolutely.